What are we looking at today? We are demonstrating Discus's 2D FAI suite. And what does that hold? Well, that holds Discus Desktop, IDA, and results. This means that you can add drawings into Discus. You will be able to manually balloon, but also auto balloon your prints to save you a great amount of time. You'll be more efficient and more effective as you are producing first article inspection reports. Not only that, but you will also be able to add your actuals and your measurements directly into Discus by using the results tab. So you no longer have to cross-reference between applications. Everything is within Discus. On our welcome screen, we have our TDP, which is our technical data package. This holds your certs, your drawings, your callouts, dimensions, your specs, etc. Then we have add drawing here. We can right click to be able to add a drawing. We can look at our most recent 7 files, our Discus files. We have our reference links, news, and tips and tutorials. Now, if I haven't already introduced myself, my name is Jeff Davis of Discus Software. The best email and contact for me is jdavis@discussoftware.com, and the best phone number would be 614-360-2424 extension 17. This should be anywhere between 20 minutes and 30 minutes long, just to be able to give you a foundation and an introduction into Discus 2D FAI Suite. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to hide the welcome screen here. And next we're going to examine what we have in front of us. We have the drawing panel above and the details panel, or the bill of characteristics, below. So what we want to do first is make sure that we have a few things established first, because we have 4 steps. And what are those 4 steps? We want to run IDA. We want to balloon our drawing, that's number 2. We want to enter our results, and then we want to be able to export to AS9102. So those are 4 things that we're trying to accomplish today. If you need to write them down, you can go ahead and do so. But we want to run IDA, balloon our drawing, enter results, and then export to AS9102. All right, so the first thing that I like to do is make sure that I have my IDA settings set up properly. So in order to do so, I'd go to settings, and from here I would go to application settings, IDA settings. And with this, we can see enable IDA pre-processing, check, great. And then we can determine whether we want to have reference dimensions that are reportable, basic dimensions reportable, or do we want to ignore these? And then we have a new feature where we can either select clockwise, counterclockwise to be able to see the sequencing of the balloons when we're running IDA. It's pretty nifty. Then we can look at IDA advanced settings where we have a high, low, or medium utilization. Now this just changes that 30 seconds to about 5 minutes time that it takes to be able to pre-process a drawing as you're adding it into Discus. So once everything is set here, we're going to go ahead and just select OK. Click. All right. So now we're moving on to the next thing. Let's add a drawing. Now when we add a drawing, I'm going to go with something simple. We'll go with BSB Solid. Now with BSB Solid, it's a pretty simple drawing. It's not too complex. There's not going to be any overlapping balloons. So this should be pretty good for us. Now I'd be able to view my print. I can also choose period or comma, decimal separator. And I can include the sheets that I would like to be able to have pre-processed for IDA. For this though, I'm just going to select OK, and we'll notice here that maybe it'll say, yep, it's saying pre-process is complete for BSB Solid. Wonderful. So we're going to zoom in here to the bottom to be able to see what our default tolerances are. Great. We'll go to settings, profile settings, and then head over to default tolerance settings. Now for something like this, we're able to click through, and it's very tabular, just like Excel, so I can hit enter, shift enter, and I can modify any of these. So I can add 0.1 here, and then we'd be good to go. We want to make sure that this matches what we have in our title block at the bottom. We are going to see that we can copy, we can delete, we can head back to what we had before. Once these two are connected, you can see here and you can see here, we're good to go. I'll hit OK. And next, what we are going to do is our zone gridding, which for those of you who are familiar with AS9102, this is what you will see in your reference location on Form 3. So we'll head over to our zone gridding. Now when we do this, we are going to hit grid enabled, and then from there we're going to select apply. Now I will scooch these in, and I'll do the same thing for the bottom right. This allows us to easily identify where a characteristic is on the print or on the drawing. So now that we have this set, I notice here that we have an 8x8. Instead, it should be an 8x4. So I'm going to reduce this 8x8 down to an 8x4, hit apply, and there we go. Now this would be a little bit distracting for us. What's also distracting is that I'm not able to move these around. I want them to be directly on that line that we see, that zone grid line. And what do I need to do? Well, I'll deselect equidistant, hit apply, and now I can move this so it's precisely in place. And I think that's good for me. But let's say that the office, I don't know, office dog or the office cat jumped onto the mouse and the keyboard and just started moving things around haphazardly. And then all of a sudden I had a complete mess here. And let's say I got back from my meeting and I didn't have enough time to adjust each of these one by one. Well, then what do I need to do? All I need to do is go back to equidistant, select it, hit apply, and there we are. We're right back to where we started. So for the next portion, what we need to do is deselect grid line visibility. This is going to remove those grid lines from our Discus drawing panel. However, you will still have the reference location or the zone gridding set in your AS9102 form. Also in our bill of characteristics or our details panel. So does that make sense so far? All right, perfect. So what we're kind of looking at now, the next thing that we want to start doing is running IDA. This is the fun part. This is what we really want to be able to see. Well, I will create IDA candidates and I will deselect automatically convert candidates to characteristics. We are going to deselect this. You want to be able to have total and absolute control when you are running IDA. So I'm going to deselect automatically convert candidates to characteristics, and we can select the default template. Now you remember we were working on this a little bit earlier, where this is like having a tabular Excel option to be able to enter your tolerances. All right, so we're going to continue with default template. We'll hit OK, and there we go. What we see here are these orange rectangles, and this is what we call candidates. They're raising their hand saying, pick me, pick me. I'm ready to become a characteristic, but not so fast. Now at this point, we are going to balloon these. And I'm going to show you two different ways to be able to balloon these. One of which is just a simple double click. I'll show you that here. Double click, there we go. And double click, there we go. Wonderful. So we have a couple that are already set for us now. This is what I like to see. And I'll do just a couple more before we start moving on to a different method. Our second method is going to be casting a net. Now when we're casting a net, we're going to click and drag and then right click. Now this is how quick Discus is. Before, if you were manually ballooning or if you're annotating in a different format, a digital format, it might have taken you quite a bit of time to be able to cast, or not cast, but manually balloon your entire drawing. Now, when we cast the net, we can go through this relatively quickly, and I usually encourage people that are listening to time this, because usually it takes me under 1 minute. Sometimes it takes me under 2 minutes. But nonetheless, that's much better than spending all of that time doing this manually by hand. That takes forever. No sense of doing that. So I'll just double click on some of these. And if you were timing me, I think we're probably at about 45 seconds. And all 38 candidates have been converted into characteristics. If you see any lingering candidates that we did not convert to a characteristic and you did not want to have that when you export to a PDF, then just know that those candidates will not come along for the ride. Only characteristics will come along for the ride. All right, now you'll notice that these automatically populate. So everything that you see in your drawing panel already populated in your bill of characteristics / details panel. So we're making great progress here. I hope that you're following along pretty well. The next thing that we're going to do is show you a couple different techniques here, one of which is changing the size of the balloon. We'll double click, and from here, we're not going to double click. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go to balloon properties. Now, once I've selected balloon properties, you'll be able to change the shape. You can change it to a cloud. You can change the size. I can change the chubbiness of the line. And once that's good to go, I hit apply, and now you can see it on characteristic number 1. Okay? We'll go back to where we had it before. Just want to show you that's an option that you have available to you. And then what I do also get asked is, are we able to delete the balloons? And yes, you can do so. You can either do one at a time, or we can just click and drag and delete those balloons. Perfect. Now, the reason why I like to delete the balloons here is so you're able to see a different function, and that function is our virtual whiteout. So when I hit Control W, I'm going to hit Control W now. All right, there we go. Now you'll notice that the requirement images of the characteristics have dissolved. They've disappeared. They are no longer present. Now this allows us to be able to see those candidates right here, right here, right here, a little bit more prominently. And that's a pretty nice function for a lot of people when you have a good number of candidates and characteristics mixed on your drawing and you're doing the click and drag method or just the double click. So that's this part here. I think I want us to start moving into our bill of characteristics / details panel now. So once we're here, I want you to look at characteristic number 1 and also characteristic number 2. Now, why do I want you to look there? Because what we're going to do is click and drag to just show you that we can renumber and reorganize these characteristics seamlessly and smoothly. Look again, we're going to move this characteristic number 2 to characteristic number 1. And there we have it. Now, let's say we have one that's a little bit further down and we don't necessarily want to spend that much time pulling them. Then what I could do is, let's say we had characteristic number 20 and we wanted that to be characteristic number 2. Well, I will double click and change this 20 to 2, and there we have it. Now that'll also change and renumber everything else that we have before it. So you'll notice here that characteristic number 2 that we had before is now characteristic number 3. Now that's a mistake that I made. So what I'll do instead is switch this from characteristic number 2 back to characteristic number 20. So we're right back to where we started, and everything is looking good. All right. So the next thing we're going to be getting into is our results. So I'll click results, and what we can do now is start entering results. There's a color coding system that we have that's fully customizable. With that, you can change the colors of everything on your drawing panel so that it matches what your organization uses. For this one, what we're going to do is start entering a few of them so you can get an idea of how this works. It saves you a lot of time, and everything is in one place instead of trying to cross-reference between multiple applications. We're going to have one out of tolerance. This will show you that Discus can be more precise, but not less precise. 9.010. And we'll add a few more just to give us a really solid idea here. Out of tolerance. All right. And this should be good for us. All right, so you'll notice here that we have a few different color options. We have passing, caution, failing, passing, caution, passing, passing, failing, caution. Now the blue denotes that either we did not enter any measurements or measurement value, or we have a characteristic that is non-reportable. So if it's a basic dimension, what we were looking at before when we were navigating and changing some of those settings. All right, so now that we have this set, I would just like to show you that you can also add a space or add a comma to add multiple values, and the status will change along with it. For part accountability, let's just add in some placeholders here. All right, almost done. So the left two columns are mandatory and the right two columns are optional. And we're going to go with assembly and partial, just so we're able to add in a parts list. And we do have Rev C available. Now we'll go to parts list. Now while we're in parts list, you can either add a part individually, or I can upload a part. And it does contain a header row. So we're going to select yes. Next, we have materials and processes. Now this one's pretty fun. We're going to use the text extract tool. Now for this, we just zoom in and we find our material, extract, aluminum. Now I want to zoom in so I don't have to squint as much. Great, there we are. Move over to specifications, right click, says material and process name. Add spec, code, supplier, cert number, cert document. If you wanted to add that, you could do so there. And comments. We'll hit OK. Close, and there we have it. We have our materials and processes set. Next thing we're going to do is our functional test. I'm zooming out here, but our functional test is very simple. It's very much like what you have with the parts list. We're just going to import from a file, find functional test, and yes, it does contain our header row. There we go. So we have our characteristics that have been set. You can add a key characteristic. You can make any characteristic reportable or non-reportable. And like I showed a little bit earlier, when I double click, we get a granular view where you can change the characteristic type, the data type, and so forth. We'll come to this in just one more second. Then we have the results. You can add your actuals into the results tab, so you don't have to cross-reference between applications. We have our part accountability for our Form 1 on AS9102. We have our parts list that we can bulk upload from a CSV file into Discus. We have our materials and processes. We also have our functional tests that we uploaded from a CSV file. Materials and process, you can do the same, but what we did for this was a text extraction, which is what you see right here. Now the next thing that we're moving on to is exporting. So we are going to move over to characteristics, head up to file, export. Now we are going to export first to PDF. Now remember what I said about those candidates, they're not coming along for the ride. So we're going to go with test 170, save, and we are going to open the file. Yes. And there you can see it. And Discus even error proofs for us. I'll show you that in just 1 second. We'll go back to File, Export, Report using template to Excel. Now we have multiple templates that are available. And all of these are customizable. Any field that you see in Discus has a token that is attached to it. So when we export, we can export with that token so that we can customize it in the same way that your organization has it. So that's just a nice feature for you to know. But we can select here, we'll go with Rev C, wonderful. And it's not going to allow us to export. For what reason? Well, our validation status says error, and it's going to tell us that we have no minimum and no maximum tolerance set for that characteristic number 25. So details, and it'll take us right back there. So this brings us to our characteristic properties where we get a granular view. And from here, what I can do is switch the characteristic type. And let's just say that the min and max are going to be 0.01, 0.01. We hit OK. And it should be OK now. Great. Our validation status has now switched from error to OK. We'll select browse and we'll go with test 176. Hit save and export. Now this takes just 1 second. Then we'll be able to open the file. Great. So here we are. We have Form 1, part number accountability. Form 2, product accountability. Materials and processes, functional tests. Form 3, we have our characteristic accountability with our reference location. If you remember, that's our zone gridding in Discus. And then we have our requirement. You are able to remove this requirement image, but I like to keep it in here just for demo purposes. Some customers absolutely love it. Then we have our GD&T, and we have our results that we entered. I'm going to close this now. And that is Discus in a nutshell. Again, my name is Jeffrey Davis, or Jeff Davis is perfectly fine. My contact information is jdavis@discussoftware.com, or you can contact me by phone at 614-360-2424 extension 17. Again, that is 614-360-2424 extension 17. Thank you and have a wonderful day.